Welcome to the Heart of Soul podcast, an exploration of who you are, what you are, and why you are, offering new ways to investigate age-old questions at the heart of you. Hi, it's Joseph, and thanks for listening to the Heart of Soul podcast. In this episode, we continue the conversation about soul species and cover the lower middle section of the array. That's, of course, by density and not superiority, as has been said. So we'll be covering from Betelguese Through Sirian souls in this episode. We thought we'd complete the soul species in just 2 episodes, which in retrospect was ridiculous, and then 3, and then I think it ends up being 4. We're actually not done recording it yet. So we had more to say than we thought, but I'm really happy to get all of this down. This and the episode that follows, we really captured quite a lot, including a fair amount of sort of downloading in real time. You get to see us work with some new celebrities, and I just had a great time with these conversations. Soul species is such a fun topic. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. I remind you, as always, to please listen to this podcast from the beginning and in order. Thanks so much for listening. Well, welcome forward, everybody. This is episode, doesn't matter. It's episode X, and X is equal to 43. Another cool number.
Another cool number, yeah.
I love the prime numbers, yeah.
Yes. And I like when prime numbers add together, too. It's really interesting.
When they add together, what do you mean?
Yeah, when like 4 and 3 makes a 7. Oh, no, it's not a prime number. 4 is not a prime number.
No, when you have 2 prime numbers together.
Yes, 2 prime numbers together, yes. That's really interesting sometimes when decoding some of those.
Yeah. Numerology is cool. We may never get to that topic, though, because we have to finish soul species today, which is, I'm glad we're going to do that because I'm sure we piqued some curiosities last time. So where should we start today?
Well, one of the things that really became evident to me early on after my non-dual event, a year or 2 into it, when I started to see these different soul species, is that they provide a meta identity. We've alluded to this in the earlier podcasts here about soul species, but I'd like to drive this home. They actually represent a meta identity that gives an overview and a purview for the local personality to see through some of their more opaque aspects. And once a soul species, for example, is identified and someone works through their personal stuff in EBE work, the soul species will inform a lot of the qualities of the person doing the vertical work in themselves, and open doors that would not be opened upable otherwise without having an advanced clarity about the specific soul species of a person. In other words, it's not only interesting as hell to find out your soul species, but it has a huge utilitarian application to self-growth, where a therapist has to take a person's qualities, hopes, dreams, and wounds from childhood and conditioning at face value.
Yeah.
Knowing someone's soul species will allow the EBE facilitator and the person themselves to have a transparency to why soul species specific issues can be identified, and thereby not have to be smaller, less applicable versions of their wounds can be sidelined while we work on the deeper issues that the soul species would expect to meet in a human life. So this is a fancy way of saying that unlike regular therapy that only really sees the personality aspect of ourselves and our conditioning, we have a deeper soul species identity to the person to work with. And by using that template of their soul species, we can go deeper, faster, and farther faster in our identification of the issues that are most applicable to that person's interface with themselves and reality at any one
Mm.
time.
And it's just to make a comparison with the Enneagram, for example, it boggles my mind often when I talk to therapists who don't know the Enneagram system, because once you learn the Enneagram, you would wonder how you ever worked with anybody without knowing the Enneagram type.
Yes,
And
exactly.
soul species is both similar and equivalent to that in some ways, and even also far, far deeper. Because like we were saying, if there's any noun aspect to ourselves, soul species would be it, because it's, immutable at the soul level, whereas in different lives we have different Enneagram types. And it also occurs to me that because our protection mechanisms basically vow to stop soul from being here in as human, that when you go to and work with the soul species of the person, it's a way of honoring the soul and sort of not bypassing the defenses, but sort of going heading them off at the pass by saying, I see you, you can't hide in this way.
Yes,
And
great point.
in my own work, my own soul species has an extra helping of intuition issues that for me have always sort of I guess hidden in some ways. And there are lots of intuitive people with very obviously open third eyes, but for me, my third eye has always been sort of quietly hiding in the background. And since I've been focusing on using it more and sort of outing that, like, to myself, and being more honest with myself about how often and how much I actually use my third eye, it just, I don't know how to describe it. It just automatically changes something and
Yes.
pushes up quite a lot of stuff to be worked emotionally.
Yeah, it's a good point, Joseph. Uh, Before soul species got unfolded here in me, to me, the Enneagram stood above even astrology, numerology, and astrology. Did
Hmm.
I say that already?
I think
Uh,
so. Or no,
yeah,
I think you did that right. I don't know.
yeah. To me, Enneagram just really gets to the literally the heart, and from our point of view, um, what the Enneagram calls your normal point value, and then you've got the underlying point. What do they call the
The
underlying?
integration versus
Yes,
disintegration.
integration. Yeah, the integration. Right. Thanks. Um, uh, the same thing applies for soul species. That in that sense that I mean, for when we use soul species as and include the Enneagram point, we can predict what the integration point is for your particular Enneagram assignation, is that the heart point or the integration point will be the point that is embodied by the healed version of the person, and the point that is the normal first point in the Enneagram will describe the more the wounded aspect of the self. So by looking at combining the Enneagram's integration point, disintegration point, and the normal first point, we can triangulate literally with the soul species how much of for example, the basic Enneagram point dynamics are still flowing in a person versus the integration point characteristics that are flowing in a person. So we use the Enneagram as a secondary adjective and adverb to the noun of the soul species. And the combination is deadly accurate,
Yeah.
deadly trackable. It gives us real benchmarks in which to make the therapeutic trap or the therapeutic track much more focused and on point, and not meandering around and wasting sometimes months or years just trying to track down feelings for their own intrinsic worth
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah, I was another good example. I was telling you before I hit the record button about someone I recently was speaking to whose therapist told her she should leave her husband And I loved that your initial reaction to that was the same as mine. Was like a therapist has no business telling someone what they should do in that way, and it was immediately apparent with this person that they have difficulty trusting themselves, which is common for a lot of people. But this particular soul species of the person, it's especially for female versions of them, because they have this the same soul species I was talking about, difficulty having big intuition and difficulty trusting it. So a therapist who can see that soul species would be well advised to lead the person to trusting themselves, not telling them what decision they should be making.
Yes.
The therapist should have gotten that already, but as we say so often, therapy is 120 years old and we're all still learning. But
Yes.
like you were just saying, a whole different track, like, oh, you don't know what to do in this relationship? Well, maybe that's because you're taking in so much information that you're confused about what you need and want. That would be a classic thing going on because of your soul species. Let's work on that rather than behaviorally trying to navigate and with the compensatory self, and never necessarily reaching the authentic, true soul self who knows exactly what to do.
Really well put. In that sense, the soul species is like having an X-ray to the bones of a person to see what the skeletal configuration is, so to speak. And by having that X-ray vision, it will illuminate and a lot of times counter-illuminate what's going on in the local personality or the suffering patterns as a way to outwork them much more directly and with more, how can I say, both space and connectedness that you can help the person get to in themselves. And then that brings back another point here. The soul species is the embodiment of the soul I. I'd like to just revisit that really quickly.
Oh, nice connection. Yeah.
We have a local I comprised of a conditioned mental body to dualisms, which is an interesting point that way, the mind I. And the mind I is usually used by the will as our first defense to not feel hugely difficult emotive states in ourselves, so that we can get meta and understand them better. So the mental body is the operating version of us that takes care of business of human life by default for most of us, not all of us, but for most of us. And the only reason the mind I is, of course, is defined as the only I in Eastern esoterica, and the only I in modern psychology, modern biologism, and empiricism. So, where the East and West co-sign that there's nothing to the I except the brain mind, or the mind body mind. The only reason it exists is that there is a soul I that is using the mind I and the local I version of itself to learn lessons in this particular Terran universe. So in that sense, when you find out your soul species, you are definitively getting information about your soul I. And it is your soul I in identities, emotional body, and soulment dharma that is slowly emergent. We help the soul I come forward through the mind I. The mind I takes the space, or what takes up the space in the mind I in EBE is most of the time our protector version of control, innocent control that have to happen. So when we got the mind is wonderful at supporting control. And so the deconstruction of control, of course, brings up all sorts of emotive states that are not fun to feel. But those not fun to feel deeper emotive states, once you detox from control, the defensive control, will illuminate directly the soul species version of how you process reality. So we can make, in the detoxing from control and the mind eye, we can again make it far more efficacious to help people bear the kind of emotions that do come up in a detox from control by linking them to their soul species emotive array.
Yeah, let me insert another personal example here. I'm very much in the process of deconstructing the innocent control right now, and there was a day or two where work felt very difficult and felt very much like the thoughts in my head were like, I don't know what I'm doing. How do I do this? This is really hard. And I was sort of meeting all of that with will. Like, okay, I'm going to focus and, use my mind and do the things I know how to do. But it felt very dewy and exhausting and tiring. And there have been waves of that recently. And then I had a conversation with someone this morning, and I was working on using my intuition, and I started to just feel, because as we talked about, the third eye is a ini, it's a yin
Yes.
chakra, and I just started to feel all this information and the very being of the person just come toward me and wash over me, and I just felt this peace of like, I don't have to know what to do. Like, this dynamic of just receiving the person, that's mostly all what I need to do, and then that will direct me to tell me what I need to do. And it was a very clear shift from the what do I do, how do I do it, I gotta do it, to oh no, the doing will take care of itself, I just have to keep being this way. And that's I've done this enough times to be able to realize, like, oh yeah, that's my soul, that's the soul eye. The soul eye doesn't operate from this frantic will, how do I do this, how do I get this job done place. It just is with in that way.
Exactly. Boy, what you just said, not so in between the lines, was you just confirmed why, in the basic metaphysics of identity, the premise is that we are emotive beings before we're willful, mental, or physical beings. And you just completely confirmed that by saying you stopped using will to use mind to have to know things, and you just felt your way.
Yeah.
There is the solution path right there. We're emotive beings first, so we may as well. We've not been taught how to live as emotive beings first. And what Joseph just described there was a therapeutically applied dharma that allows us to actually live emotive first, not just as a theory, but live it, embody it, and not only live it and embody it, and survive feeling all those that emotivity, but also helping you shake hands with your own soul eye. Because what we call the emotional body is the linkage between our local mind eye and our soul eye. The emotional body is that linkage. You could say what we call the emotional body is the local version of our soul eye's true being. That's our emotional, and it's full of wounds. So EBE looks through it all and tries to heal those wounds so that gradually the soul eye emerges as the operating boss of being. We used to call it head of household in Identity 1.0.
HOH,
yeah, I call it Bob now, boss of being.
You do?
Yeah, just in casual fun for kicks and giggles. It's Bob. Well, there's Bob. So in that sense, I wanted to take the whole idea of soul species out of its own reality, which is, like we said, interesting enough, but it is an intrinsic part of helping people learn to become their most authentic, emotively and soulfully authentic being. So that's the context that we use the soul species for, not just as an interesting a spiritual kind of identity. We actually use it every single day.
And I want to say one more thing about that I think may drive the point home, is to arrive at that point, what it took in me was experiencing the stress, like the intense stress of what it has been like, I'm sure, for a long time, to try to will my way through working with people and through life. And through what I've been doing, the stress of that has been coming up to the surface. So I've been dead-ending that paradigm, dead-ending that dynamic, and just feeling how, for the control, the innocent control aspect of me, how hard it's been for him. And to be with that part and help him see, you don't have to do that, you don't have to do it this way, and feeling the abject difficulty of it. Like yesterday was such a difficult work day for me, and I just kind of collapsed at the end of the day. And I think that was absolutely necessary for the soul I in me to show up and be like, well, first for the control in me to be like, all right, I can't go on like this. That's just not working. But that part of me needed to land in me so I could be like, yeah, that's not working. Will you let me step up and try it a different way? And then, but it's by experiencing that difficulty that the soul I can show up. It's not just like making some kind of mental choice. You have to feel your way through it all.
Exactly right. Wow, how beautifully said.
So that's where I am today. Tomorrow I may have to do it all over again. There are many layers.
For sure, that's the way it goes. We spiral our way to our most soulfully authentic self. We don't linearize our way. We spiral, and that's the yin way, of course. Also, spirals, not right angles and linear straight lines like it is for yang.
Yeah.
So when I first started getting these soul species, of course, I really didn't know why I was receiving it at the time. And so it was this kind of a standalone, interesting topic. And we would do seminars sometimes. And maybe sometimes on the last day, we would spend the day typing people in their soul species, which really helped. And we're pretty good at it. What I miss, Joseph picks up. If Joseph is, he's become a little better than I am overall in soul species. But what we've got here is just, again, it has evolved from having this amazing, immutable, as you said, deeper true nature of ourselves. And how do we apply that to our everyday life?
And that's another, I want to ask about that, is another different thing, like you just mentioned, in the 1.0 version of the paradigm. Soul species was not something we typically talked with people about until they were like a year into the work. And now we're very much leading with that. It's different.
Yes. I think that's also because since 2012, yin divinity has been ruling the roost here for Earth, which is another interesting topic, which we haven't delved in really deeply into. Let me just say here that I had a relationship with the Yang-based guide until December 21st, 2012. And for the last 7 years, I've been trying to unlearn the frequencies of that relationship with the Yang version of God, which retired and took a second seat to the Yin version of God, which is extremely different bandwidths of relationality altogether. And so, in that sense, because it's been baking now for 7 years, we had the 10-year anniversary just this past month of the Yin divinity taking over Earth. And so in that way, that baking, incubating of curating, we could even say, of Earth's soulful realities has also upped the ante on using soul species earlier in the process of people trying to find their way out of their dead ends of their protective version of self. To their deeper soul I identity.
Because soul is essentially yin.
Yes. And that's why our EBE work on the personal is spiritual in itself, because its end game is to de-coarsen how our original soul species had to learn to adapt and shrink to fit here on planet Earth. And by healing that coarsening or that extra covering over our natural soul identity, we blend the personal and the spiritual into one domain. And as we've talked in other podcasts, not two domains that had been metaphysically split our whole run since we climbed out of the trees as a species, that the earth and the personal and the world of spirit and divinity were two definitively different worlds metaphysically, instead of one seamless reality with two poles that are gradually densifying in the one direction and de-densifying in the other direction.
Oh, it just hit me because yin is about wholeness and not segmentation.
Yes.
That yin, the yin era we're in, also would raise the stakes for desegmenting.
Yes.
I hadn't thought of that before.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, Yang is characterized by self-relational and segmentation, meta, mental, willful, and Yin is about other relational and is heartful, soulful, and emotional. So that's why the Earth is in such turmoil right now, because the divinity's a rising tide that's upsetting all the arcs, literally the K arcs of patriarchy
Huh.
and power grabbers in this world, and that's why we're all in such turmoil here. It looks
What
bad, but it's actually on the way to good.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I've been thinking about a lot, and at the risk of going down another rabbit hole. We'll probably get to this in the couple thing, but what I've noticed a lot, there seems to be a lot of what I would call, we don't really have a good word for it. I was going to say emotional indulgence, but it's more like feeling, more superficial feeling indulgence,
Yes,
which looks immature, but it's actually because the zeitgeist is that feelings are less repressible. And
yes,
so if we can't get to the bottom of them from feeling to core emotivity, then it
right.
ends up looking like feeling level indulgence, which is why
Yes,
there's so much acting out happening in the world.
yes.
And
Oh,
it,
great
it, and it
point.
looks like a regression, but actually it's progression.
Yes. Wow, I hadn't thought of it that way, Joseph. That's exactly right. Uh, we can repress core, we have to repress core emotivity, almost all of us to some degree or another, to get the job of being human done. So, what we do instead, we have a layer of energetic versions of that core emotivity we call feelings in EBE. So those feelings are less repressible. They're a little more patent to feeling the feelings and getting the meaning of those feelings. But as Joseph just said, uh, as those are becoming more excessively acted out, they're actually thinning out to that degree and give
Mm.
more room to expose the core emotivity below
And,
them.
and so you've got all these people using like the hashtag facts, not feelings, kind of like, hey, stop indulging your feelings. But
Right,
again, there's another split. It's
right.
the feeling is coming from something, even if it's
Yes,
a projection that needs to be unpacked, or it could be
yes.
somehow accurate. But this facts versus feelings thing, it's mind versus emotion, and that segmentation has to end.
Yes, that's a false dichotomy,
Mm-hmm.
even though, of course, we can understand why it's evolved to that point right now. But if it's true that we're emotive beings before we're willful, before we're energetic, even
Yeah.
willful, mental, or physical, then anything that gets us down the road closer to the repressed core emotivity is progressively more soulful, because below the repressed, wounded core emotivity is our soul eye. That's the interface, and that's why these are existential issues. We process situational traumas in EBE, and we process all sorts of local issues, but eventually we get down to the existential, and that's what we're talking about here: core emotivity, which underlies feelings, which is the energetic forms of the essences of core emotivity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So with that,
Mm-hmm.
I think that was good to kind of perspectivize why these soul species have become increasingly more important in therapeutic application. And even if you're not in a therapeutic context, they're interesting as hell, because they'll speak to not just qualities, as enneagrams do so amazingly, and some Ayurvedic astrology also does that,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not so much about the qualities. It's the soul species tells us the algorithm with which we process reality.
On an existential level.
An existential level. That's one step deeper than qualities. They'll
Yeah.
show up as qualities, but first you have how to process reality in the first place. What's the algorithm? And every soul species has its own algorithm of how they process reality, which is why Joseph's questions to that person that he mentioned earlier are so right on, because the person will speak to some of the downline qualities, and out of those, it's much easier to infer the soul species of the person.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, how do you teach someone to I imagine listeners are like, well, okay, well, how do I recognize soul species? Well, I guess we'll be talking a little bit about that today. Open your third
Yeah.
eye is the first, do
Yeah.
that. And
Right.
we'll talk about some hints and tricks that we use to identify them today.
Yes. All right. So let's go through the spiral cornucopia, so to speak, that we talked about last time, and actually go through and spend just a few minutes on each soul species, give some examples of each of the soul species, and why how we might. I'd like to try to also, between you and I, Joseph, kind of at least infer the algorithm of the way they process reality. I think that might be fun.
You can lead that. I'll try to keep up. That sounds really challenging.
We haven't mapped that quite yet. I just know that that's in there as our next level.
Wow. Yeah. Totally.
So you'll be able to quantify the algorithm of processing reality. That's out there, right there.
Yeah,
right
I can't wait to see how we come up with that.
Let's give it a go while we're on air, so people can see us, stumble around with a whole new domain.
Sure.
Okay, so we gave the ontogeny and teleology of the soul species last time, and we started with the angel soul species and how the Lucifer angels seeded all these other 11 soul species all the way down to the Terran universe that we are living in now. And I'd like to reverse that now for today's dynamic and start with the Terrans, which are the most dense soul species and the youngest. And we'll give some examples of that and why. What are the qualities of the Terran soul species as the youngest, and what do they contribute to the Earth? And that's a wonderful topic. So this is the other end of the rainbow, then angel soul species. And Terran soul species are the ones that, I love what you say in your little slideshow about that, if I remember right, is what you see is what you get.
That's where I go to, yeah.
What you see there, they're the youngest souls, and so they're not really nuanced in their qualitative or quantitative being. It's not that means that nuance ability isn't there. It's just this is what they start with. I think the more millennia or the more decades, let's say, in this point, that yin divinity is ruling the roost, the more directly will Terran souls also start to evolve to be more nuanced. Mm-hmm. But this is no judgment of any elitism. I like to say that again with a capital N, no elitism here, because the density and youngness of the Terran soul species, which comprise about 2/3, a little less than 2/3 these days, I'm getting, as Earth is being prepared for other soul species a little less dense to come in and incarnate. The Terrans are denser in consciousness, and that means they can do jobs and careers that would just cripple or a less dense soul species consciousness could bear. I couldn't bear smelting iron ore into steel as a career. Building roads, digging ditches in the old days. And so all of the jobs, these are not low jobs. They're jobs that all the other soul species depend on life for. Mm-hmm. The Terran soul species allows survival, is a good way to put it on this planet, because they're responsible for all the care and feeding of infrastructure and of all the things that we take for granted: water coming through the faucet in the morning, heat coming through our vents, a building of homes, and planning for the future. A lot of these things are all handled day to day. The wheels of our world are run by Terran souls.
Very first chakra
people. Mm-hmm. They don't have a lot of access to spirit. They're drawn to mainstream's religions.
Collectivism,
because they're still young. They're not really self-differentiated yet. This is their home soul domain.
So they don't have a hunger to go home because this is their home.
Exactly, and in that sense, but that allows them to be conditioned by axial age religions, pre-psychological religions, to believe in big daddies in the sky and 72 virgins and all these other nonsense stuff that religions teach. So they tend to be attracted to mainstream religions. They're easy to manipulate because they're sweetly naive in many ways. the whole MAGA world, led by the Orange Man, are almost 100% Terran souls. And we'll get to why he's had such power over them here in a few minutes from
Yeah,
his
and
soul.
like, there's a good example. Is I have a fascination with watching videos about Trump fanatics talk about Trump, and when you look in their eyes, it's like there's how I see Terrans is there's no doubt space. They
Yes,
all the way think what they think, and there's no doubt space. They've completely become in one way whatever it is they believe, and
yes,
they lack meta, which would be a shadow side, but the light side of that is they're whole, because
yes,
the
yes,
back of them and the front of them is the same. That's the what you
yes,
see is what you get, and so it
exactly.
lacks nuance and doubt space and questionability, but it means they're wholly committed to whatever they're wholly committed to, and that cuts both ways.
Oh, I love that you added that last phrase. It cuts both ways.
Yeah.
You don't have to like it, but you've got to admire the wholeness of it. Uh, uh, in that sense, they're so conditionable that they're so, the reason they're so conditionable by whoever lies the longest and most adroitly or piously on the religious side, they're conditionable because they have a really hard time with critical thinking. They
Mm.
just can't doubt their belief space any more than a child would doubt in this sense, a younger human being doesn't worry themselves about wondering why they feel the way they feel. They
Yeah, or
just
even
are.
like with a child who wants a certain toy, you can't engage with them about why they want the toy
Exactly
and
right.
like work their motives and question it. It's like they just want what they want. What do you mean? That's what I want. And there's a beautiful innocence, but it's also, and I say this in a kind of neutral way, it's unsophisticated. There's not a lot of moving parts there.
Yeah, and we want to, and I love that you brought up that word unsophisticated. It's a benign truth for identity. There's no judgment to that at all. It's simply any more than we said in earlier podcasts about that younger souls are not pathological. They are just young.
Yeah.
And any more than an older person in a family, an older sibling is better than a younger sibling is ridiculous. I'm an angel soul, and I learn every day from Terran souls about their non-nuanced wholeness. In
Mm.
the Maga world, it's repelling to me, but that's content. The context is they wrap both arms right around it. The Chicago where I grew up was always called the city of big shoulders,
I didn't
and
know that.
yeah, because of the industry that started post Civil War, around just before the Civil War, big meat packing
Mm.
terminal with all the railroads and stuff.
Oh yeah.
At any rate, they're big shoulders. They grab wholly onto everything, and when it becomes from innocent naivete and they're humble, uh, uh, Terrans are just, you can't help but love them. They're so
Mm.
bloody sweet.
Mm.
There's no elitism here. I learn from them every day, and older souls and angel souls, in our cases here, Joseph, we provide embodied dreams for what they can become one day.
Mm-hmm.
We can inspire them while they ground us.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't a day that goes by that when I turn on that faucet to fill my teacup, I don't thank the Terran and the Terran world. So again another beautiful moment to be say there is no elitism in any of this. It's just what is. It's just what is.
Yeah, I was just
So,
thinking about that recently. Whenever I have to turn a screw that's upside down,
oh
I
yes,
get totally confused. I can do right tight, left loose if it's facing me, but when it's
yeah,
upside down, oh man, I tightened a water filter too much just a week ago, and I'm just like, I've done it like literally that exact water filter like a dozen times, and I over tightened it the wrong way, and I'm like, this is something a Terran soul would have no problem with, because
yeah,
they would just know.
yes,
And if I had a job like doing plumbing or something, it would
right.
last like a month, because I'm too nuanced to be able to get right, tight, left, right, tight, left, loose. It's just, yeah, there's too much going. I have too many moving parts to be able to engage with something that's
Yes.
simple. And
Yes.
that works
And this is
against
where
me.
they've got us. They've got
Yeah.
us. And that's a skill set that we just don't have.
And that's why I love doing that kind of mechanical stuff, because when I pull it off, it feels like a miracle. And I feel
Yes.
very special that I've been able to do it.
Good point. I know growing up, I didn't like to do those kinds of things for
Mm-hmm.
exactly that reason, because my heart and head were elsewhere. They weren't
Mm-hmm.
focusable on such mundane, edgy realities. And I had to learn to do a lot of things on my own that way too later on in life, but still. So we'll use a couple of a lot of times celebrity is a good way to spotlight soul species because they're in the public eye and everybody knows them. One of the best soul species, Terran soul species actor out there is Andrew Dice Clay. He's from the 70s and 80s, but if you look him up and you'll see in his eyes and his demeanors, he liked to do stand up. He did stand up for a while, and he just exaggerated all his natural qualities.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, he made him comical, but those were actually he wasn't an act; it was him.
Yeah.
He
Similar to
just
Trump, he just spoke his mind and people
yeah,
loved it. Yeah,
yes,
because he
exactly
was
right.
so
Only,
honest.
but Trump isn't a Tehran.
No.
Uh, uh, we also spoke last time about the Divic version, the
Mm.
softer, more angelic Divic aspects of each soul species, which is it's an adjectival um, uh, um, uh, uh, softening of the edges of the soul species. Toby Maguire, Divic Earthen. Paris Hilton is a classic Divic Earthen. She's just not all there, but there's good reason why she's just
Mm.
not all there. And so, in that sense, she glows. There's a glow to her. There's a glow to Toby Maguire. There's a sparkliness if you look in his eyes, and that sparkliness oftentimes will be able to show you what a Divic soul, a Divic version of a soul species is. All right, going the other way now. The next level, less dense, is the Geffian level. Out there in the mass consciousness world, these are what are referred to quite often as the lizard people, the draconians. What's the other one? Saurians.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Geffia, the Geffian universe is just it's two levels away. There's a earthen Terran, then there's a Divic earthen, then the next one is the Divic Geffian, and the next the Geffian. So we're going to just we'll talk about Geffians, not distinguish it between Divic and normal Geffians. But this is a very a dark world because it's a will-based world, almost 100%. And when there's will in every soul, Geffian soul, to some large extent, there's going to be a lot of collisions, constant collisions. There's this smoky kind of a dark dynamical reality to the Geffians. So angel soul species don't spend a lot of time there, but when they have to spend it, it's quite difficult to do so because there's hardly any room for caring and softness and heartfulness. And the reason the Geffians exist, why they developed this, is because they're the next level, less dense than the Terrans, and so they're farthest, almost to the farthest away from divinity in consciousness, and so will becomes their survival, and that also they use will for thrival, not heart for thrival, like Terrans are capable of and other soul species. So it's not so much that there's no such thing as essential evil. They're not dark, but this is the level of consciousness that oozes down into the planetary collective and became what is called hell here by religions, full of devils and dark people, dark spirits and demons who are leading us down the road to our own soulful detriment. But they're not evil; they're just willful. And the best use in the world, I've been arguing for a lot of millennia, why are we still letting Geffians incarnate on Earth? on my committee, the committee I'm on in between lifetimes, and they're yeast. They're yeast for the growth. They're here for us to say, not all other soul species, to say, just say no, just say no. But until you say no to a Geffian, oftentimes they can link you, and where you've got to say yes, 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 until you bang your head against the wall, as a lot of MAGA people have been doing in the last year about the MAGA world of Trump. Trump is a
This is the deal with the devil type metaphor. It's the selling your
exactly
soul,
right.
not to the devil, but to your own willfulness.
To your own will. And if Catholicism ever got that clear, of course, it would stop being the religion that it is. But you sell your soul to the devil. You sell your soul out to your personal will, which doesn't have good critical thinking. Now, the Donald is he lacks critical thinking in the most exponential way. He has no meta to look at the quality of his belief systems, his narcissism and everything else. But the function that he is shown has given here, which is positive, is to expose the density and the darkness that those in the Terran world that he has galvanized, because they're so malleable. If the will-based world of the Geffians is what it is, that means they will impose their will on Terrans. They can't impose their will up the ladder of less dense consciousness. They can only impose their will on those they can, quote unquote, enslave to their worldview. And so this is why the rabidity, is that a word? The rabid
sure.
Devotion that MAGA people have to Trump is literally, they've been manipulated to that because he seems so sincere. But I promise you, if you look into his psychology, and you can, if you're a therapist or a less dense soul, everything is calculated. Everything is calculated to his advantage. He doesn't care about America. He only cares about himself. He even admitted that. He wanted to run for president to enrich his brand. He did not expect to win. He even admitted that. He was completely befuddled. He didn't know anything how government works. He thinks you can just arrest people. The president can arrest people that he doesn't like. I mean, this is beyond childish.
Anyway, or hold on to an office that he lost after an election.
That he knows was not true.
Yeah.
But he manipulated his Terran followers into believing it was true, and now they believe it as if it's a fact.
And there's a great example of the willfulness in that phone recording with the Georgia state officials, where he's recorded as saying, "Find me these 11,000 votes." Like, what? Find me the votes. Like,
what is
like
this?
As if that was a completely reasonable command, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Steve Bannon is another Geffian.
Oh, yeah.
Trump, of course, heads to the point. Rudy Giuliani is another Geffian. But he might be a deviant Geffian, because for a while as mayor of New York, he actually did some bloody good.
Yeah, I think Giuliani's a deviant Geffian.
Yeah,
he's got that the pointy ears energy a little bit.
Yeah, he does. He in that way, he's a little. You can hold him a little more responsible for his gunk, but still. So Geffians are not just in politics, of course, but it turns out that 8 out of 10 world leaders on this planet, not so much in the first world, but in the second world and 1.5 world, are all Geffians. Putin is a classic Geffian.
Mm-hmm.
No, there's no softness in that way in his soul field whatsoever. And again, as Joseph said last time, I think the best way to a lot of them are Geffians are drawn to power positions, and policemen, as we said last time, CEOs of corporations, anywhere where personal power and will ends up in success. You've got a Geffian at the helm, or you have an autistic genius, an autistic Orion, like Bill
right,
Gates.
Which sometimes happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, related to the processing of reality, then, would you say then the way Geffians process reality is through the lens of power? Like, how can I get more power and control? Is that what you were pointing
I
to?
would say yes, will-based power and control.
Mm-hmm.
That's their algorithm of the Geffians, will-based power and control. Deviant Geffians also are drawn, they're softer versions like Rudy, but they're also drawn to power. But you can tell they're not, they're dating power. They're not married to it. They want to be in power, but they're not as fused to the power will dynamic as regular Geffians are. Um, so in that sense, there was a quote in your soul species presentation by Plato. What was it? The something about if you are not willing to rule yourself, you're going to give yourself room to be ruled by someone else.
Uh-huh.
Uh, that's Plato said something like that, and it's the Geffians take advantage of that in the young, naive, and wonderful newness of young souls of Terrans.
Mm.
So, since the world is mostly Terrans, Geffians rise as quote unquote cream to the top,
Yeah.
but it's not really cream, folks. It's poison.
And how
So
would you summarize the Terran way of relating to reality, processing reality?
I I love your phrase. What you see is what you
What you
get.
see is what you get. Okay.
That's how they live. The sun is warm, the snow is cold, and they relate to everything simply in terms of experience, not analyzing experience. They are really just experiential, and that's how young kids. That's how young kids are
Yeah.
too. We lose in
Yeah.
childhood. We use that innocence of not an analyzing, like you just said, what our behavior comes from. It's just what it is. What you see is what you get. Some soul species, other Geffians, both George W. and his Papa are Geffian souls. Oh, Condi Rice back from the 80s and 90s. Oh my God. Hugh Hefner, Dr. Phil, L. Ron Hubbard.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Scientology is very will based.
oh my God. Although Cruz he's a Geffian too, but he's a Deviant Geffian.
Mm-hmm.
He's got some softness to him, but boy, is he about control and self-belief and will. He looks like he's an unstoppable force of nature, and that's exactly what Geffians are. But he's got a little softer version of it. John Travolta, same thing. Kirstie Alley is also a Deviant Geffian. Mel Gibson, I used to think he was a Deviant Geffian. I think he's a real Geffian.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But I could be wrong about that. He might also be a Terran. I can't, different moods I see him on that way.
I see what you mean. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we got 2 down, 9 to go. We've got all the 5 angel soul species too.
Yeah, there's no way we're gonna get this done in one episode.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little slower. Then I'm still got a little getting over a cold here, so we may have to edge over to the next one to complete.
Let's take our time.
Okay.
Carps.
All right. The next level are what again, these names just came to me. I can't, and I'll tell you why when we get to some of the soul species that have similar names to stars and constellations. I'll get to that in a moment. But I don't know where the term, I know the Terran is easy, but Geffian and Carpathian, I don't know where those names came from. They just came immediately, and they've stuck really well. But it doesn't really matter what we call them.
Yeah.
Getting their qualities and their algorithm of how they process reality is how you can identify them. You can call them anything you like. I could assign 11 colors to these. Those are the greens, or those are the gray oranges, or something. Mm-hmm. Carpathians, they're the next level up, and they live in a much more light-filled dimension, where they go home after they die. And the Carpathians are also drawn to power positions, but it's not they have about a third of it is to half is personal power. Geffians, it's almost 100% personal power, but Carpathians are about 30 to 50%, and the other 50% call to power is they actually want to do good. They actually want to do good. They're more benevolent. In that sense, I have to say it I hate to say it this way. I don't want to make any more divisions, but the majority of Republicans are Geffians or Deviant Geffians. There's only a few Carpathians in the Republican Party, whereas the Democratic Party is just chock full of Carpathians. There's a couple Gefs in there. Maybe we can think about that. I haven't identified them yet, but Carpathians, they want they have a draw to power and to leadership, but again, they want to do good. They tend to be warm. They're not pedantic as much as they kind of hide their pedanticism, other than Bernie, but Bernie's an independent in that way, even though I admire Bernie A to Z in many ways.
Sure.
But Democratic leadership, they tend to be actually quite good looking, actually, and they have grounded personalities.
That's one of the best ways. Yeah, they are good looking, and they have a kind of gold yellow in their field. Like if I imagine them wearing yellow clothing, it sort of works for them.
Yes. I think Bill Clinton used to wear yellow ties. It looked great on him.
Joe Biden is a
Joe Biden, a lot of, exactly. Classic salt of the earth quality. God, that Biden, I mean, I'm 71 and I would never use the word malarkey in a sentence, but Uncle
he pulls
Joe.
it off.
He pulls off malarkey somehow. That's a 650, 60, 40s, 50 word.
Yeah, he's bringing it back.
Yeah, they're well adjusted enough to enjoy the realm. They like people more than they resent people, and they've got some critical thinking in ways that Geths just don't have. Bill Clinton, we just said, his wife Hillary also is a Carpathian. Again, you don't have to like. That doesn't mean that because they have the good of others inherent much more deeply in their leadership qualities and will to power. It doesn't mean they don't have their own stuff. Bill is really public that way about all of his shortcomings. Hillary she just couldn't get past the pantsuit, and what that is, that's just a metaphor. Her pantsuits, she just couldn't get out of her youngic. She led with a youngic, not a yinic dynamic. Even though she's a woman, but you could also feel her sincerity in many ways. It doesn't mean she was 100% sincere, but there was a combination of youngness to her and sincerity that made her polarizing to people. Either you loved her or you hated her. It's one way or the other that way, but she's Carpathian. Jennifer Lopez is another great one, who are Tiger Woods, Brian Eno, the composer, Sean Connery comes to mind. Oprah is the classic Carpathian. They're not all drawn to leadership positions in government, but of course Oprah, she's got her own dark sides, of course, like we all do. But
if she were a Gethian, I think she would have run for president.
Oh, absolutely, right. Carpathian, she doesn't have that hunger. She rules her roost in her domain. What more could she want? I mean, how many mansions can you buy or build? You know? Then we got the diva Carpathians, and these people tend to be funnier, looser, more creative. George Clooney, Robert Redford, Tom Hanks. These are all Brad Pitt. They're all Bruce Willis. They're divic Carpathians. They've got
very likable.
Very likable. They've got that wry kind of twinkle in their eye. You know they're putting you on, and you love it. You know, Clooney has that, and Pitt together. That's why they're such good buds. Also, Bruce Willis. I was sad to hear about his aphasia that was coming up. It's must be really hard for him and his kids.
Yeah.
So Carpathians, how do they process reality? Through I would call it goodwill driven call to leadership and notoriety. Goodwill, not just will based, but goodwill. They have a goodness to their will, almost bright light and funny wry kind of way of processing reality. Their goodwill to power, their goodwill to notoriety, their goodwill with people. But they don't like to be part of the crowd. They want to lead the crowd. They're not like Terrans that way. The diva Carpathians. They want to lead, but they do it. A lot of comics are diva Carpathians. And also some of your soul species, Raphaelites, are also a lot of comics.
A good interesting combination. The phrase that came to me for Carpathians is strategic benevolence. What do you think about that?
Say it again.
Strategic benevolence.
Oh, strict. That's it. Oh man, you're great with words.
Well, I like
That's it.
goodwill. The goodwill to power is kind of a pun on Nietzsche's will to power, which is cool.
Yeah, it is. But no, I like strategic benevolence.
Hmm.
That's the way they process reality. All right, we come to the next level. This is these folks are rare to see, this soul species. You don't see them that often, but boy, when you see them, they are really
They're hard to miss.
they are amazing. Actually, now that here's the first soul species that corresponds that came to me to call them Betelgeuse, and that is a star system. A Betelgeuse is a star. And when people have asked me, oh, are they from the star Betelgeuse? No, no. These soul species are dimensions other than this universe that all the stars are in, this universe. It happens that stars and black holes, both the positive and the negative stars and black holes, are entryways. The stars are the yogic expression of other dimensional tunnels between the dimensions, and black holes are yinic. You fall in and get transformed, whereas the other you shine brightly, yogic and yinic. So Betelgeuse, they're a different dimension, but if I were in a spaceship that could get to Betelgeuse tomorrow, you could drive through with your spaceship. There would be some sort of black hole or Bose-Einstein. What do they call them? I forget in physics.
Bridge to something.
Wormholes.
Bridge.
Wormholes to the Betelgeuse dimension. Not to another universe in this dimension, to the dimension, a different dimension of being that you can't see with your eyes or touch or walk on or measure, but it's a dimension that exists just distal to the Carpathians. So Betelgeuse, the funniest things about them is they're awkward. They've got kind of buggy eyes. They walk funny. You can see them walking. They walk. You remember John Cleese and Monty Python?
The Ministry of Silly Walks, of course.
Silly Walks, yeah. John Cleese is not a Betelgeuse, but that exaggerated knee up and then forward, knee up and forward. They have a very similar kind of obtuse way of walking that are recognizable. They tend to find each other. Men and women find each other. I've not yet seen a same gender bond of Betelgeuse. It doesn't mean they're not out there. But they also have dogs a lot. They have a lot of dogs with them.
To me, they always look like they just got here and are like they just beamed down or kind of looking around in wonder.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have physical characteristics as much as energetic characteristics. It's like, I think you said one time, their souls don't quite fit their body.
Yeah. Remember, there was, I think, Men in Black 2. There was the guy who was like made of cockroaches, and he was like, they wouldn't quite fit in his body, so it was like he was bursting at the seams, sort of thing. And to me, the discarnate Betelgeuse souls look way bigger. So it looks like they're stuffed into their human bodies, and it makes it difficult to like work their human bodies. They seem kind of spindly, and when they walk, it looks like they're walking in like 3 directions at once energetically.
Yeah, well, that's a good way to put it. Yes. But they're rare to see. If you go to a big city and you sit on a corner for a month, you'll see at least one family or Betelgeuse walk by. But they're unmistakable. When Bree and I see them occasionally, I'll slow down the car. Bree, look, what's that? Oh my God, it's 2 Betelgeuse. It's so great. They look like they just beamed down to this planet, like Joseph said. But they're not all of them, depending on their conditioning here and their families of origin, they can be subdued, but you can see that more subdued in their expression, but you can see their weirdness and completely unfamiliarity with this world. The best example of that is Yoko Ono. She is a classic Betelgeuse. You look in her eyes and you go, where are you coming from? It's not that she isn't she's a gifted being. She is. She's wonderful that way, and that she was drawn to Lennon in the first place. Which did we ever type John Lennon?
He's on the soul species list as a Gabrielite, I believe.
I think Yeah, but you know what? It might be Raphaelite given his musicality.
Right. Yeah, that
I
was
think he,
pre-Raphaelite.
yeah, I think he's a Raphaelite. Anyway,
Okay.
she was drawn to him, and Betelgeuse are really good-hearted people. They're just kind of do. They're not sophisticated. They don't create imagos. Okay, they don't. They're not driven by self-images. They are what they are. What they are. What they are.
Yeah, they're very unself-conscious. Yeah, that's a great point.
Unself-conscious, and they're brilliant. They can be brilliant though. Yoko Ono's off the charts. She's got not only high IQ, but she's got a fairly high CQ also, and she's a performance artist, which is a wonderful deal also in her way of weirdness. But even when they were hugging together, having the sleep in there, you could tell they're different soul species. But boy, they loved the crap out of each other, Lennon and her. They
Ed
really.
Sullivan's, I think, one of my favorite examples of
Oh,
Betelgeuse. He really looks like he's from another planet.
and he speaks like it too.
Yeah.
He has the most strange dialect. His mouth is so Ed Sullivan. Those of you Gen Xers and don't know who Ed Sullivan was, but his mouth is so Geffy. And just put in YouTube George or Ed Sullivan, and you'll see exactly what we
You
mean.
said Geffian. His mouth is Geffian or Betelgeuse?
Betelgeuse. Sorry, did I
Okay.
say Geffy? It's
Yeah.
Betelgeuse. Another Betelgeuse is Sylvester or Sly Stallone. This
Hmm.
guy, I'll tell you, his makeover and his plastic surgery stuff and his hairline, and I mean, we said they're not self imagic very much. They're not, but he's an exception to that. But he's so otherworldly, but he conforms in ways that you got to love the guy. I mean, he's endlessly creative and smart guy, but he just doesn't fit. You can see his soul and his body just don't fit together.
Yeah. And
Uh,
look at Rocky, which is a script he wrote, is
yeah,
such a great Betelgeuse script because it's like he's so alone in the world trying to make it,
exactly.
and that's
Yeah,
like
trying,
that's sort of part of the
exactly.
theme of Betelgeuse's.
Right. They want us. They want to stand out from the crowd, but they only will stand out on the crowd if they've got a skill set or a gift set that speaks to the masses. And of course, Rocky spoke to every downtrodden poor kid in Philadelphia that they could become somebody. So, but Betelgeuse, they're inspirational also in their purity. They're weird, purely weird, and they're wonderful in that. I can't remember. Oh yeah, Elvis Presley, another one.
Yeah.
All that goofy stuff. Yeah, he steal some dance move from what's his name? Oh God, the black entertainer that came before him.
Well,
Beautiful guy,
everybody steals something from the people who came before them, though.
I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, his hip movements were all from Johnny B. Good guy. Who sang Johnny B? Not Johnny B. Good. I
Chuck
can't think of
Berry.
it. No, that's Chuck Berry, but it was the other guy. Anyway, Elvis Presley's a divic Betelgeuse. He was softer and more vulnerable, and you could see that. The poor guy, at the end of his life, when he got so heavy into drugs, into food, there was a tragic version to him. And when you see a tragic figure like Elvis Presley was, I like peanut butter and I like bananas, but I can't imagine putting them together as a sandwich.
Oh no, it's a
And
really good sandwich. Peanut butter and bananas. Yeah.
is it? Well,
Yeah,
he
it's
made it
good.
famous. He made it.
I
Uh,
think he did even more outrageous things than just that.
yeah. Uh, so Dievik Betelgeuse, and here's another interesting one. I used to think, and he still may be a Dievik Betelgeuse, is Woody Allen.
Hmm.
Uh, he
He's a tricky
he
one.
does. He's a tricky one because he could be a Dievik Orion also.
Yeah,
Uh, you
but
see,
he's a
because
six though. This is a great example of how we
oh,
do
go
this.
ahead. Yeah, go
He's an
ahead.
Enneagram 6, which is one of the most mental types, probably the most mental type. So that would make him look more Orion than he would
Yeah.
be.
Yeah, that's right. If he's a six, that explains it then. Because my first, I mean, you see him walk, even in his movies, he can't hide his walk.
Yeah.
It's subdued, but it's odd. It's odd.
I think he'd be
Who
more
else?
focused if he were an Orion somehow, like because he's kind
Yeah,
of all over the place when he talks. And
yeah. And he's stream of consciousness, and that's
hmm
more Betelgeuse than Orions are measured. They
yeah,
they don't just
Like Ben
output.
Shapiro and is an
Oh, yes,
Orion. Yeah,
exactly.
should add him to
Yes.
the list.
Maybe another Dievik Betelgeuse. Matrix guy, Lawrence
Lawrence
Fishburne.
Fishburne. Yeah.
Yes, Dievik Betelgeuse. Oh, and the classic Dievik Betelgeuse is Benicio del Toro.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this guy. You see him on screen and you go, no, I don't know how he finds the motives for all these characters, but all the different characters you can still see behind him to his Betelgeuse, where he's just spitballing it. You can't read out what his motive is because he's coming from a Betelgeuse unfamiliarity with the human race. But boy, he's great. He's great. I love Benicio del Toro, and like it or not, also Dievik Betelgeuse, Will Smith. Even though, of course, his moment of infamy slapping Chris Rock there at the Oscars. But still, if you've seen him in a movie called Emancipation,
Yeah.
which is a true story, oh my God, that was his pinnacle of
Well,
acting.
there was the slap was where he revealed his wee spacerness, where his was
yes.
taking basic silent orders from his wife. That was where
Absolutely right.
Yeah, a wee 3, a rare wee spacer Enneagram 3 David Betelgeuse for Will
There
Smith.
it is. There it is. I can't believe you said that. When they kept switching at the Oscars between his wife's face and his face, you could see she absolutely loved what he did. And then she came out and she vacillated with it, of course. But they're telepathic and she orders him what to do that way. But I love both you guys. This is no judgment on you. Your Dievik Betelgeuse, you're immensely creative.
I still love Will Smith. He's one of my earliest favorite rappers. I don't subscribe to canceling people just because they do something stupid, or else I would have been canceled many times over.
Are you kidding? After 2015, I should have been canceled for the next 1,000 years.
Yeah.
No, that's an exaggeration.
Yeah.
But one last one, though, the complete Dievik Betelgeuse for me is Garrison Keillor.
Oh, he is so. Yeah, I was going to say he's a great example. You don't know why you love a Betelgeuse person. There's just something. They're so weird, and they draw you, and you're like, wow, this guy's awesome. And I don't even know how or why.
Yeah. What was his show?
Prairie Home Companion.
Yes, exactly.
On NPR.
Classic. If you ever saw him walk up to a microphone, you'd see he was a Betelgeuse right away. But boy, this guy, he's the complete Betelgeuse, Dievik Betelgeuse anyway. Okay. Now
what's their summary for how they process reality? I know this is a tough one.
Oh, let's see.
There's something about improvisation there. There's like a spontaneity.
Yeah, they're not pre-considered.
Like an unself-conscious spontaneity.
Yeah, it's not that they're unmindful. They're they don't watch themselves live. So that's another way of saying what you're saying. So what was the word? What was the phrase you just used?
Unself-conscious spontaneity or experimentation.
Unself-conscious creativity. I would do that. Unself-conscious creativity. We'll get the bare bones algorithm here, and maybe we'll modify them later. But this is great, Joseph. See, But we talk about it, we get in the stream, and then somehow between the two of us, we get the algorithm.
Well, and this is a great example of this how each soul species processes reality is a crucial thing to do what we were talking about before, to how do you work with someone, because it's a meta frame for just what their interface with reality is. So I'm super happy to be writing this list down as we talk about it.
Yeah, it's and again, this is always evolving, always evolving. We make an assessment of a soul species 5 years ago, and we redo it today because there's more light and depth to the viewing mechanism, and because of yin divinity going on.
So, like, I would predict if I was working with a Betelgeuse soul, they would have a disability related to meta and looking at themselves, probably.
Yes.
Because on a soul level, they're so unself-conscious, they would have a hard time probably looking back at themselves, which is very common for like people in the East and collectivistic cultures.
That's right. That's right.
I don't know if I've ever worked with a Betelgeuse. They're kind of rare.
Yeah, I think you if they ever walked into your office or onto your screen, you'd recognize when I think.
Yeah, I think I would know if I have. Yeah,
right.
I spot the way they walk. That's for sure.
Okay, we got time for maybe two more soul
Okay.
species for today. The next level less dense is what I call the the Arcturians. Is Arcturia a star? Arcturus
Probably.
is a
Arcturus. Yeah,
star.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's a star. Again, like Betelgeuse, it's that's not where they live. That's still this part of this Terran universe. But that is a gateway. That constellation of Arcturus is a gateway to the dimension of the Arcturians. Now, because they're just about midway between the least dense soul species and the most dense soul species, they're a little more toward the Earth. But because they are one step more, a little closer to the Earth, they're the ones that, how can I say this? They're energetic weavers. Uh,
Hmm.
as the souls, as the dimensions edgify and densify, you get more and more dualistic kinds of edges. They're the ones. They're the terrans. And I'm just getting this just now. They're the terrans of everything that goes less dense than them. They actually bridge the gap between energetic essences. But I'll start here. Essences, energetic form. The form of that would be matter-based or plasmatheric. The form would be plasmatheria, and then the expression would be matter. They are energetic weavers of plasmatheria that goes to that is a substrate for matter. You
Hmm.
could say the Arcturian universe is best represented badly, but effectively, I think, by the quantum mechanics, quantum foam. What's the underlying dynamical world of energy, and that's the quantum world. They have actually help maintain. You could say electricians help maintain the power lines that give us all of our electricity. They are masters that they originally built and wove, and are the maintainers of dualistic edges as they go down line more to
What
densities.
the a lot of psychic people call the grids, yeah,
The
or
grids, yes, they're the grid
the
people,
weavers of the grids.
the keepers of the grids, and they have to maintain them all the time because of gravity and divinity interacting all the time. Um, they're kind of they're not really juicy personality types, but there's something that you noticed that I didn't. I think if I remember right, there's a thing here, a
Their
V.
nose and
Yeah,
eyebrows looks like one kind of V-shaped thing, like the shape of a seagull when they draw it on a painting. Really, there's a sort of
yeah,
swoop thing.
yeah.
Hmm.
The arcturial dimension itself, Arcturia, I call it, is it's a beautiful place. It's right on the edge where plasmatheria segues into matter, and so it's just a magical place, especially the Divic Arcturia. Oh my God! The I live on. I've got a space in between lifetimes where I go to that's just on the border between the Divic Arcturian and the Arcturia version, and it just we could call it. I've got these amazing landscapes. Crystals and crystal mountains, and they like really wide open spaces. It's very when you want to rest from if you had a whole lifetime in New Delhi or New York City, you'd want to make sure you do a stopover in
Oh,
Arcturia.
that's the dryness. It has like a spa. That Arcturia has a kind of like a spa vibe to it. It's very serene and big open
Yes,
spaces, and that's
exactly.
why as personalities they tend not to be very loud, or because they're just like the staff you'd want in a spa. There's a soothing,
Yes,
calm energy to
yes,
it.
exactly right. Uh, there was also a point where you made a long time ago. Oh, well, no, I think I originally taught this. You'll tell me if I'm wrong.
Mm.
A lot of souls will pass through Arcturia when they die, angel souls. They want to pass through to decompress from the Earth experience because it's got such that whole vastness,
Ah, yeah,
spaciousness to it.
yeah. That was your call.
And as we'll get to next time with Luciphilites like myself, we often live there for a while because of that wonderful spaciousness. Because I can feel all the soul species dimensionality all the way down to the Terrans from there and all the way up to the Urielites on the other end. So it's a beautiful place to rest and take stock of the big segue of things from plasma theory, from ichor to plasmatheria to energy to matter.
Mm.
Some celebrity soul species, classic one, two classic ones to me. I wish would get together. I always saw them together. Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey. McConaughey's actually looking for public office. I would hope he's a good moderate,
Yeah.
independent moderate. Yeah, he's either you could call a conservative Democrat or a progressive Republican. I love him. Jodie Foster. They're just they have tempers in private, but their personas in general are very calm, and I see that seagull thing in both of them when I look at their pictures. Also, the classic is Clint Eastwood is a divic art. The guy is always about doing the right thing. If you notice, he's never played a villain in any of his movies. Not one. This is one of the few. A lot of movie stars will want to go off character and play a villain occasionally, but he just won't play a villain.
He totally could. But
he could. He just hasn't got it in him. He's a divic Arcturian, so he wants to stand for the right and the right, the might and the right and the good, the might, the right and the good. But he's a nice person to be around. He was mayor of Carmel for a while, wasn't he?
I think so.
By the sea. His private life is a little checkered, but he's a good example of a divic Arcturian. Steady. These are steady state people. If I wanted something done, not done, but I could count on Clint Eastwood, count on Matthew McConaughey. For sure, I could count on Jodie Foster for keeping their word on anything. And that's one of the wonderful things about it. Denis Leary.
Yeah.
He's not a well-known comic now, but in the 80s and 90s, he was kind of out there with that. William Dafoe also, who I love that guy. Willem, yes, not William.
I love Willem Dafoe, yeah.
And Jennifer Aniston, too, I think, is a divic Arcturian. So Arcturians, again, let's get their...
how do they process reality? There's a nobility there. There's a...
Oh, yeah, nobility, yes.
That would be a word we would also use for Arcadians, so we have to be careful not to...
it's not quite nobility, but it's in that
honor,
direct integrity.
Integrity, yeah, it's quieter than honor.
Quiet, yes, exactly. Arcadians take it to the next level to nobility, but there's a basic integrity to them. You trust them, like I just said. I would trust the word of any of these Arcturians.
Quiet integrity.
Quiet, effective integrity. Integrity. See what I mean? They apply their integrity to whatever. Jodie Foster's integrity is so easy to read out, and it comes through even the characters that overlay her personality. Same thing with Matthew and Clint. You can feel the integrity even if they take it to some darker places occasionally, like Clint did. Still, the innate goodness and integrity. So what were the three? Do we have
quiet, effective, integrity, and goodness? Would we add goodness to that too? Maybe it's a little bit too much.
Well, keep it in and we'll pare it down later.
Okay.
We're just spitballing now to get the first reality of it. Let's finish up with Sirians because they're about halfway. The next, again, Sirius is a soul, the dog star. Isn't that the dog star, Sirius? I think
Pretty
so.
sure, yeah.
Yeah. Again, the same principle here. They don't live on the star Sirian or any of the planets in the Sirian system. There's a gate. It's a gateway to the Sirian dimension. These are really, how can I say? Now, they're not tragic figures, but they're tragic loners. Let's say this. Sirians are basically by the numbers, not by the qualities, but by the numbers, the least populous soul species on planet Earth at this moment. Sirians. They tend to have issues of they're depressed and introverted. Although they can be very bright and shiny depending on their conditioning and their childhood. But they have even if when they're shiny, like someone we know, Bruno, if he's out there listening to these.
I remember Bruno.
Bruno was a lot of shininess to him. His face was very difficult for him not to be it hurts his face not to smile, but
Hmm.
inside him, and he could confirm this, bless his wonderful heart. He's a very lonely guy, and when we typed him as a Sirian, he was very happy to know that. Their energetics, not their appearances, have a kind of a washed out, lonely, non-energetic feel to them. But even that their strong emotions tend not to be in the foreground. If you give them just a little bit of known full, felt full compassion, boy, they'll open up right away and they'll
Hmm.
give you their insides really easily. But they tend to be loners because they don't meet. When I first typed to a good old Bruno as a Sirian, I was so hoping I could see a Sirian mate for him. But there are less Sirian female incarnatives,
Nice. I like that.
female incarnatives than male, because the yin female is so much more about other relational. It's really hard to be a Sirian woman and stay and not go too young that way. So
Hmm.
it's very difficult for that. It's a Syria itself has got a lot of water to it. Whale creatures. I used to think dolphins, but the dolphins are more from Pleiadians now that I
Yeah,
would
yeah, yeah, yeah.
say that. But that's watery. They have their own Syrian form of mermaids and mermen in that sense. Their bodies are not like mermaids and mermen, but they're they're they have arms, but they have wings more for arms, and they've got fins more for legs. Um, they this is where when people say, "Oh, I'm watered down feeling," here they're when you're around them, they kind of lull you into a but it's
Hmm.
not uncomplicated, peaceful. I make up in my head that a lot of spa staff Syrian might be drawn to a spa staff, a lot of water, a lot of calm and peaceableness. Uh, they hold their truth pretty strongly, but they won't push it on you.
Yeah.
They're hard to change their opinions. Bruno has got lots of strong opinions, and we don't try to change him. You can't help but love him, no matter what he believes in, and that's fine too. What he believes in is fine. A lot of integrity in Syrians also. They live in their inner because they don't have that many Syrians to cohabit with on the planet. They live pretty much in their inner world. But when they trust you, as I just said, and when they trust you and let you into their world, their inner world, boy, they'll give you everything. They're quiet. What's the word? The phrase you used once? Quiet achievers. I think you said them as
Uh-huh. Quiet achievers. Yeah. I
quiet
wrote
achievers.
down peaceful, tragic loners. I've been recently rewatching the John Wick movies with Keanu
Oh yes.
Reeves, who's
Uh-huh.
David Sirian. And I swear
Yes.
those movies are like about what it's like to be a Syrian here because he's such a
Uh,
loner,
exactly.
strong
Whereas
but
whereas
tragic.
whereas the Bruce Willis characters in his movies, they're loners too, but it's all a big laugh.
Uh-huh.
It's not a big laugh for Syrian loners that way.
Maybe
So
anti-hero is an appropriate
oh
name
yes,
for.
anti-hero,
Hmm.
but they're troubled.
Hmm.
They're the Devic Syrians. Their emotions are more on their sleeve, but they're not fun emotions. Even when it's always fun when I see Keanu smile. It's like it breaks his face. Uh, he, it's like he's trying to smile with his smile muscles. I mean, I've seen him a few times in the pictures with his mouth open, happy. That felt okay, but when he's got
Oh
his
yeah,
teeth and
I
he
remember
smiles.
there's an Ani DeFranco line that I used to describe Syrians. They look like a picture of themselves taken from far, far away.
Oh, who came up with that?
Ani DeFranco,
Oh
the
man,
folk
that is
guitarist.
really true.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's like even when
Uh,
they're right there, they seem far away. You kind of have to
yeah.
squint to find them because they're behind, and they don't.
Yes.
you can feel their strength, but you can't really access it because they're so
Oh,
withdrawn.
same thing with their goodness.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell Keanu is just good A to Z,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't. You sense that. So I would trust Keanu with anything, the person,
Mm-hmm.
but like you say, John Wick is a persona that he literally soulfully embodies as a
Mm-hmm.
Devic Sirian. Um, and Winona Ryder is also another Devic Sirian. You can tell she's got a new career in Stranger Things there as the mother. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but she, you can just feel I can feel the Sirian in her. It's all way back there. And she smiles, but she doesn't smile with her soul. Uh,
Mm.
she's she's gentle in some ways, but to me, I saw they were together. Winona Ryder and Keanu Reeves were in one movie together, and I tell you, it's one of my favorite movies, just because you have two Syrians on a screen and they're romantically drawn to each other, even
Oh
though it's a
yeah, what was the name of that movie?
disaster. Destination Wedding. Uh,
Yes, that was
you haven't
brilliant.
seen, if you want to see two Syrians in the same space and see the disaster of what it would be like if two Syrians tried
Because
to
neither
mate.
will come to the interface of the
No,
relationship.
no, that's right. They can be really self-analytical to a fault, but they project their self-analyses on others a lot. And in this movie, the two characters are stand-in, bona fide Syrian personality types. So their soul, both of their soul feels. Whoever cast them, I want to kiss them on the forehead. They casted two Syrian souls into personalities written on the script that fit exactly Syrians.
Yeah, I mean
It's just,
it's a script about the Syrian difficulty of inhabiting what it's like to be a human being.
oh, exactly right. Yeah, what it's like to be a human being, not how to be a human being.
No,
There's
definitely not.
the
But the
characters in that movie are trying to fit in and they can't, and they finally make tragic peace with the fact that they can't.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what Syrians do. Another Devic Syrian takes it a little different direction, and that's Leo DiCaprio. Uh,
Mhm.
you can feel the loner in him,
Mhm.
but he takes it with a little more. He's a little more seriously connected. He's much more of an activist on Earth with the environment, and so it's a rare thing to see Syrians get involved with things actively bigger than themselves because they're so unfamiliar in planet Earth, not getting a lot of relational reflection, that they turn inside themselves and they don't turn outside into outside activists very often. But Leo it's on the side, but he's also a Devic Syrian, a loner for sure. He doesn't let you can tell he's had lots of romances that we've known about in the news, but you can tell he doesn't let anyone really close.
Mhm.
You can feel that. Um, so
We
let's
don't
stop
have an
there.
example in the celebrity slideshow of a pure Syrian. We only have Davix. Do you have any pure Syrians come to mind?
Oh, give me a moment. I have to go to the Akasha for this
Okay.
because I don't. I know, even though I've always loved movies as alternate realities that show the worldview of the writers and the directors and the actors, but um, let me see if there's any Syrians, plain outright Syrians who are in show business. No, I don't get any. Uh,
That's the problem there. If the Davik ones are
yes,
somewhat drawn to the public limelight, but the pure
right.
ones would not be.
The Devic ones are, you could think of the Devic version of each soul species as that soul species with wings. Um,
Hmm.
and so that's what gets them into the notoriety, and they kind of like the stage and the movie film. I'll take that under advisement if there's if there's a Syrian, but at the moment I can't feel it.
Hmm. I've
Our
got
process?
peaceful, troubled, loner, anti-hero. That's what I've wrote down.
Well, the anti-hero, yeah, peaceful, lonely. Um, oh, they can't lie.
Mm.
Uh, they can misdirect, but they just won't lie
Hmm.
about anything that's important to them. They can misdirect, they don't manipulate, but they can misdirect. Um, does that give another lens to the processing? They're wary.
Mm.
We need to put the word wary in there. Wary promulgators of what you just said. Something
which
like
can, it looks like stubbornness. It's sort of like, that's the we were talking about in Destination Wedding. They're both wary of each other. Neither of them shows up at the interface of the relationship. They dance around each other with this playful wariness.
Exactly. Wariness is in there. So throw those together and we'll mush them into an algorithm a little later. So that's good. We got about halfway. So again, if any of these folks ever came into Identity's personhood dharma, we would already have their soul species. We'd hand it to them on a silver platter, validate them to that degree, and then if they wanted to work their stuff, their soul species would be a really big help to help them process who they really are. Because in the end, when we say authentic, our soul species is the most authentic version of ourselves, and they are embodiable on planet Earth, or will soon be able to be embodied, because we have a paradigm finally called identity that sees us as emoto spiritual beings first, before anything else. And so the whole Dharma in personhood, sagehood, and sainthood and identity is about giving more and more room from situational to existential to universal space for the soul to emerge. Situational space in personhood, existential space in sagehood, and universal space in sainthood. Your soul species will flower to its greatest degree in planet Earth's heavy gravitational domains if you undergo an emotive first transmutational path rather than just a transformational path as offered by the best therapies. So that's the role and content, about the meta and the content of about half the soul species. We'll finish up the second half. We'll have a lot more to say about angel soul species and that, because they're the least dense soul species here. And we'll speak from more personal experience, as more angel soul species are drawn to identity than any other species, although that is shifting now. More and more different souls are coming, and I feel that's going to come more. So, Joseph, this whole topic is such a treat for me, because you and I just co-inhabit this with the same sort of
totally.
Deep excitement about the strangeness and wonderfulness of soul species. So, thank you so much for your half of it.
One day I hope to be getting to lead tours and soul species spotting, which is a fun, an existential, a soul level people watching activity. It really is fun to do.
Oh yeah, let me give one last 1 minute story on that. I got to know a couple of young people back about a dozen years ago, and we went to the mall once in Southern California, a mall, and I told them I'd give them $1 for every angel soul species that they saw. And I trusted them, but they had to walk with me, and I had to confirm it. And I think one their brother and sister, and I think the sister got a little more money, $5 or $6 than the brother did, but they each picked out 5. This is a very crowded mall, so there was a lot of people in it. So they picked them out. They picked out. They weren't always right, but they did. When they picked them out, they were really right. They thought a couple were soul species that weren't, but they got a couple. They got a couple dollars in their pockets for that. I treasure that experience. So just what you just said, take a walk down New York at lunchtime, or just sit on a cafe and outside in the summer, or in Central Park, and do some soul species. Would be great. Oh, I like to do that on Nob Hill in San Francisco too.
Yeah.
So, okay. Thank you, Jen. Joseph, again.
Thank you, Stace. This was great. I can't wait to do the second half, and I'm glad we're taking our time with it.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, I'm toast. Thank you for listening. Yeah, thank you for listening. Tune in next time, and until then, we wish you well on your journey. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to the Heart of Soul podcast. To learn more about Stace Barron and Identity, please visit identity.org. To learn more about Joseph Shapiro, visit clearandopen.com. Until next time, we wish you well on your journey.